When we're feeling confused about what we want to do in life, the most common saying we'll usually hear from others is follow your passion. But no one really talks about how to do that. They just automatically spit out the cliche because it's so widespread in our society. I think I'll have to agree with Cal Newport on this one. Follow your passion is terrible advice.
In addition to being an astonishingly popular piece of advice, follow your passion is also an astonishingly bad piece of advice.
The first thing we need to understand with passion is that passion is more about strategy than inspiration. We usually think along the lines of just waking up one day and randomly we'll know our passion. This law of attraction logic most likely won't work in regards to finding our passions. Most of us find our passions in life through experimentation. It takes a bit of effort and self-analysis. And if you noticed, I said passions as in plural. I'm pointing that out because that's another common misconception about passion, that we can only have one almighty singular passion in life. This is mostly because of the influence of TV and society. We think of passion as this singular thing, but it's not.
So we have to lower the bar from this impossible height where we put it, which is you have a one true passion, and if you figure it out, you're going to love your work starting the next day. And if you get it wrong, you're destined for a life of misery. Like, we have to lower that bar down to there are many different things upon which you could build a life of real fulfillment and passion.
We can have several passions simultaneously. For instance, I myself love working on these videos, and I love hitting the gym, love cooking and eating clean foods and learning more about it, and just love learning in general. Most of us can have more than one passion. We aren't bound to only one interest in life. Now, before explaining how we find our passion, this next point is the key to being able to become passionate about anything in your life. Passion isn't a starting point, it's a conclusion. I'll say that again. Passion is not a starting point. It's a conclusion. We don't start with passion, but we can end with it.
Said what I'm actually observing out there is that maybe 8 times out of 10, if you interview someone who really loves what they're doing, they probably started without a clear-cut vision that this is what I'm meant to do. But what they did commit to was getting very good. Getting very good at skills, becoming very impactful, building mastery. And that for this 8 out of 10 cases, the passion follows the mastery. As they got better, their interest and passion grew. And by the time they were world class, they had a huge amount of passion for what they did. But as Bloom's research makes clear, that passion grew along with their skill. It did not exist at that magnitude in the very beginning.
Gaining mastery in a subject is a fundamental part of us being passionate about that subject. On the path to mastering anything, we become passionate about that subject in general. The main point with this is not only to try and become good at something, we need to aim high. Remember, we want to become a master at it, and we can't do that without aiming high. To give you an example, not only do you want to write a book, you want to write a book that makes the bestsellers list. Not only would you want to open a restaurant, you would want to open the best restaurant within 50 miles. By taking this high goal road, we start to look at the little details and intricacies of how everything connects in that field, and we just sort of naturally get this need for more and more information. And then we become fascinated with that subject, and it leads us to becoming passionate about it. See, passion is basically automatic on the pathway to mastery. So now, with that major point out of the way, let's talk about how exactly we find our passion. I remember in my second year of college, I was conflicted if I chose the right major or not. I'm sure a lot of people can relate with that. So I was feeling pretty disgruntled about it, and I remember I went to one of my professors and he showed me this perfect little tool that's a great starting point when it comes to finding passion. He asked me 3 questions. The first question was, what do I love to do? Then the second question he asked, am I good at any of those things that I love to do? And then finally he said, do people need or value any of the things I'm good at and love to do? Basically, can I find a way to monetize it? Which is a lot simpler in today's society than before. So the point here is to ask yourself these 3 questions, and it'll lead you to your sweet spot in life. We can toy with this equation too. It's not a fixed thing. If we're not finding the answer, we can dedicate some time to practice and become better at the things we love to do that we know the world also values. We can even go as far as increasing the list of things we love to do by simply trying new things. Some we'll like, some we won't. If it's not the right choice, we usually know shortly after starting. But if we keep doing it as time goes on, that list of things we love to do will increase.
Finding things that you resonate with through exposure, and then by really engaging with something, you realize whether or not it's something that is going to turn into a full-blown fascination. And then from the fascination, you go down a process of gaining mastery.
Don't overanalyze or overthink this part. Just Google a list of hobbies, pick out a few that interest you, that you're curious about, and focus on one of them at a time. That is a key. Just focus on one at a time so you can fully expose yourself to that activity. Now, this is pretty important. If you're discovering you're not interested in anything, then it's likely your dopamine responses are off. Dopamine levels can have a lot more to do with passion than we would think on the surface. Let me give you a picture to imagine so I can explain it correctly. If we were driving down the road that leads to our passion, our dopamine levels being off is going to be what determines how foggy it is and how clear we can see that road. The more cheap dopamine spikes we get from things like TV, video games, social media, high sugar foods, and all that other crap that throws off our dopamine responses, the thicker that fog will be and the harder it'll be to see the road we're on. Then, because the fog is so thick, we might miss an intersecting road that we were supposed to turn down, or even just a road that kind of piqued our interest and probably would have been worth taking a detour on. In order for ourselves to be passionate about things, we need to let go of as many unnecessary dopamine spikes as we can, specifically the ones that are related to instant gratification. When we watch a lot of TV, get high or drunk, or stay on social media all day, it gives us an instant high dopamine response compared to what we should be getting, which is a delayed dopamine response, which we would get from working on something we're passionate about. If we avoid these things, we will naturally become more passionate about things we're working on in our life rather than just working on our image on Instagram. Our dopamine responses have to come out of what we create, not what we consume. That's really important, so I'm going to say it again. Our dopamine responses need to come from what we create, not what we consume. With our dopamine responses in check, we'll naturally seek out more dopamine responses through earned activity. Things like exercising, choosing the right foods to eat, completing tasks, and going for goals. Every instant high dopamine spike activity that we can let go of will make our road to passion just a little bit clearer. So in conclusion, you can see how finding our passion will take some effort, and that's exactly why the biggest block to most of us finding our passion is, as usual, ourselves. Thinking we'll just wake up one day and suddenly know our purpose is wishful thinking at best. And then when nothing comes to us, we tend to ask others what they think we should do for our passion. Does that make sense? It kind of defeats the concept of passion altogether. This decision has to be on our terms, not what our mother or father thinks we should do, and not what our friends think we should do. We can take suggestions, but the end game of our life has to be a result of our own choices. And the biggest problem most of us have with passion, we don't even get a chance to begin chasing the things we're passionate about because we have to give up our dreams for a paycheck.
How much did they first pay you to give up on your dreams?
27 grand a year.
And when were you going to stop and come back and do what makes you happy?
Good question.
I see guys who work at the same company for their entire lives, guys exactly like you. They clock in, they clock out, and they never have a moment of happiness. You have an opportunity here, Bob. This is a rebirth.